Okay, welcome back to our December 14th we are today, right?
Yes.
December 14th meeting, last meeting of the year. We did the Tourism Marketing Awards, and we come back to Department 4, go with Management's section, redistricting county commission districts based on the 2020 decennial census data. Sorry. Mr. Doolin.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Clyde Doolin. I'm the Comprehensive Planning Administrator. This is the third presentation of the commission redistricting item. As you mentioned, every 10 years with a decennial census, the commission districts have to be reviewed and revised. And I want to go to page 373 with the resolution. Attached to this board item is a resolution for your consideration. Staff recommends approval of this resolution, changing your district boundaries. Attached behind this resolution will be Exhibit A, a map that we discussed with the board on December 7. Colors are a little different, the same colors as currently used in the map of commission districts.
Surprised you didn't run out of green.
And following that are the legal descriptions for each of the 5 commission districts.
You don't know how hard it was for him to fill in every one of those pixels.
And I want to extend a special thank you to the survey staff, because they worked very hard to put together all 5 of these legal descriptions for each of the 5 commission districts following the boundaries shown on that map.
Can you zoom that, make that a little larger, sir, please?
Sure. As you can see, they went line by line right through, showing,
Yeah. Where's that person? We should meet this person.
it's very detailed work.
He was here earlier, Mr. Walker.
So that concludes the staff presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. And as I said, staff recommends approval of the attached resolution with Exhibits A and B.
Is this, it doesn't say public hearing, but is this Sarah, do we have to take, we can take public comment. Do we need to take public comment on this?
Yes. And everything. I'm sorry, sir. Krista Story, yes. That just because it's an item under the statutory requirements, anything that comes before the board, whether it's a public hearing or
I kind of assumed as much. This is a public hearing. Anybody?
Started here. Huh? It's just like you just started.
He's new. He's on probation. You got to give him a chance.
This is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this item, seeing none, back to the board. Commissioner Campy.
Couple of questions. Where is Miss Lovelady?
Homesick.
Okay, I thought maybe you drew the short straw. No? Well, I know that you and her and Ms. Story and others have worked very diligently on this. It's not an easy process. It's not easy for the commissioners to have to go through the process. I know you tried as hard as you could to make it a fair process. I would make a motion to accept staff's recommendation. And I know that at a meeting following this meeting last Tuesday, I had to be at the school board for a different committee, and they did ask some questions about this. Did you have an opportunity to reach out to your potential counterparts or Kimberly Everman or anybody? Because they're going to basically...
we sent them over to Dr. Millay, and he's asked me today whether or not you've approved these for final. And so at least that's been my contact as far as,
I know that they were having to be making their determinations and approve them. I think they have a meeting either later today or tomorrow or something, but they're going to have to approve their version of this before the end of the year as well. So when we're done, if someone could send them over again.
yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we were, and with the descriptions now that we've got these meets and bounds, that will be helpful for them.
Right? So I just wanted to say thank you very much for very difficult work.
But as your conversation with the superintendent, he didn't have any issues.
No,
He did not indicate, he just wanted to know if you'd finalized it, because the ones, last time we said were still preliminary.
I'll make sure. So we had a motion.
Second the
It
motion.
was second on the motion. Is there any discussion, further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting.
Thank you, members of the board.
Clyde, thank you very much for that and everybody involved. Next item on the agenda is Department 5, presentation on preliminary map of development throughout Martin County.
What do you need, Lisa?
Schilling and Ms. Wixer.
Good afternoon. Lisa Wixer, I'm the county engineer.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Paul Schilling, Growth Management Director, for the record.
This is the development map that we, as you requested, to show all of the developments throughout Martin County, including the city and the village of Indiantown specifically. What we've done is created a preliminary map for discussion today. Some of you were at the MPO meeting yesterday, and we talked about it briefly. The MPO yesterday approved a scope of services to pull this map together and make it an interactive map that could be presented to the MPO on an annual basis to identify the priorities from a transportation perspective, but also to regularly update this map and bring it to the joint meetings of the boards of county commissioners, the city of Stuart, the village of Indiantown, and the school board. The scope was approved. This is a preliminary map, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at and to get your feedback on the different types of developments, the way it's presented, and if there's anything in particular we might have missed or you would like us to expand on. I don't think this is the map, so I'm going to get out of this. Excuse me for 1 second.
You got it.
So as I said, the map is an interactive map. Some of the layers can be turned on and off. What we did was separate out the projects that were in the village of Indiantown as well as the city of Stuart, differentiated the color scheme for those that are outside, that are in unincorporated Martin County. So we have projects that are in review, which means they actually are seeking a development approval for either a master plan or a final site plan. Those projects that have been approved, and then and that's what it is right now, and then those projects that are under construction, meaning they've had a pre-construction meeting. So the criteria we used is if it's in review means it's, like I said, it's got an application that's currently being reviewed either by the city or the county, the village. If it's been approved, then it's been approved and it's gone through post-approval and is ready to either move forward as a final site plan or move forward for construction. So we're suggesting that we separate the approved, so we have approved and approved for construction. That's not on here yet, but that's the next step that we would suggest. So an approved project would be a project like that in, just going to use Pine Lake Prairie, for example. That's an approved project, but they don't have approval to build anything today. So that would be a different distinction, maybe crosshatched or something, so that somebody that was looking at it as, and you could tell whether or not they had the ability to start construction. And then, and that would be through post-approval, so that once the project went through post-approval, it would be approved. So a project that you approved this morning wouldn't automatically update this afternoon. It would wait till it went through the approval process and the development order was recorded. I can see you have a question.
I do, but I'll let Commissioner Heatherington go first.
Go ahead.
If you scan back over, is there a way to, that shaded portion, is that indicating the city of Stuart
This is
Yes.
limits?
Yes.
Okay. That was,
And so those projects in the city of Stuart are shown over here. The legend for the city of Stuart projects are a little bit different.
but the shaded category is the boundaries
Yes,
of the city of Stuart. Okay.
as well as the other municipalities are shaded.
Okay.
Indiantown.
I don't know who went first. If it was Commissioner Jenkins, we'll go down there first.
I just, an obvious one for me being, I guess, somewhat colorblind, is the approved Indiantown development and the Martin County in review. Is that kind of looks like the same shade. Can we make it distinctly different?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Hurd?
Yeah, why are there so many lime green projects outside the boundary of the city of Stewart? If lime green means approved in Stewart, then why are there so many, most of them are outside the city limits?
Are you looking at the map that's in the PDF?
We're looking at your map.
Because we've changed it, we've updated it since it was printed, so we're looking at the map. This is interactive, and we're kind of
Refining it.
refining it as we go through the process. So at one time, we had them all the same, and we thought it would be easier to change the colors for the city so you could see the distinction.
Okay.
So
So the ones that I'm complaining about are actually approved in the county.
We don't know which ones you're complaining about.
Well, they're on my map, in my agenda, and most of them are in green outside the city boundaries. But that doesn't make sense according to your key, because in your key, green means approved in the city. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you see what I'm talking about?
in order to meet the deadline for the agenda, that's where we were.
Okay.
And we looked at it some more and made some changes to it and cleaned it up a little bit more.
So if you go back to the one you started with,
This one.
this one.
The interactive?
Yeah, so the lime green in this case on this screen are within the city limits.
Yes.
And the blue line just doesn't, the city limit line doesn't really show up. Either it's hiding behind the green or whichever color, but
Right.
those are clearly in the city, right?
Yes.
If we zoom down in there.
Like
Yes,
this?
that-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as you zoom in, you can see the
Boundary.
name, the boundary, and then there is, if it has a description in the database that we're retrieving this data from, we're using our Acela process, and the city of Stewart has a GIS map, so if there's a description there, it will come over. We are working with the city staff, the Village of Indiantown staff. We've invited the towns of
Jupiter
Jupiter Island,
Ocean Breeze.
Ocean Breeze, and Sewell's Point. We're all going to get together tomorrow afternoon, kind of refine this and make sure we're using the same terminology, and then what we're using for descriptions so that they are very similar in nature. So when you see the presentation at your quarterly meetings, the joint meetings, it'll be one presentation and all the data will be presented the same, so you're not seeing different colors depending on who put the map together, or is it X amount of townhomes or single family, or
Or statuses.
and the status is the same. So again, the status we're recommending would be approved for construction, under construction, or in review.
Commissioner Hurd, did you have more on?
Just one other question, and that is in the Village of Indiantown, what's the status with the DRI?
Approved.
It is approved as a DRI as a master plan, but it would, so that's why I was recommending that we separate approved and approved for construction, because that's a big area, as is Pineland Prairie or Newfield. But they don't have any ability to construct anything yet.
Okay.
So I think if we can differentiate that, it gives you the longer term and the short term.
And Newfield, is that approved for construction?
No.
Okay.
Right, Commissioner, you may recall there's a approved master plan on the first phase, and that subsequently needs final site plans to move to construction.
Okay. Thanks.
Is that it?
That's it.
Commissioner Campy.
Thank you. Two questions or one statement. When you meet tomorrow, if you could invite Kimberly Everman from the school district, simply because a lot of these new projects do alter the capacity of schools at the elementary, middle, and high school level. When I was on that committee, we were going back and forth on deciding, like, how do they consider Newfield? How do they consider the projects within the city of Stewart along Commerce and Indian? You know, Kimberly had a pretty good understanding, remarkably great understanding of every project. But if you're going to sit around, and so she should be included, or whoever they designate to do that, so that she can sort of stay with it, because those neighborhoods, beyond what we do and the other municipalities do, they're the ones that automatically, all of a sudden, 50 new students show up. Even when we were having our discussions, we ended up reconvening for a second meeting, for an additional meeting, I should say, because there was the project that was on US, I guess, one off of US 1, north of Walmart, that what we were, even though some of it's under construction and almost done and some of it's going to start, we wanted to say that when they were selling those units or renting those units, that they would already know, the developer would know where those kids are going to elementary school, middle school, and high school, right off the bat. And so that would be helpful. And then the other thing is I don't know if it was just a weird example, when you clicked on Stewart Springtree, do you write Stewart in front of every project, or is that project called Stewart Springtree?
That project, I believe, is called Stewart Springtree.
Okay, yeah, if you could then, for the interactive map, when you're doing those, if you just pick a different one with also in the city of Stewart, just any random one,
Yeah.
it should say Harbor Grove and maybe in parentheses Stewart or Martin or Indiantown, because I think it's important that we continue to differentiate what are our projects and what are their projects. The colors are terrific. I was thinking about this when you mentioned it yesterday at the MPO meeting, that you could have done shades of this, because if you print this in a static version, not the interactive is great, but I don't think most people will go to our website or find it. Someone will make a PDF of it and it'll circulate around. So the more differentiation of whose project it is helpful. And then secondly, like you mentioned yesterday, Ms. Wixer, there's a big difference between approved and approved for, because a lot of projects get approved and for whatever reason they just never happen. And then I also think there's a pretty big difference between like approved using Newfield. It's approved, but there's no construction approvals there. So, and I mention that for two reasons. Some people will look at this map and say, look at all the developments, but other people will look at the map, because I get a lot of feedback from residents that say, when will Newfield happen? They're interested and excited for, like, to get it going so that they can, some people that are deciding, like, where will I live over the next 5 years are hanging on to where they are currently, hoping to move into Newfield, potentially. So, but I think this is very well done. It's interactive, which is helpful for the people that will know how to use this interactive map or where to find it. But it does differentiate where the projects are. Even if you had the ability, like on these lime green ones that are obviously approved within the city of Stewart, if you zoomed in, you'd have to zoom in pretty close before you get to the name. I guess there's nothing you can do about that, but I wouldn't mind a big S on that. Or an I in Indiantown, or whatever, just so, because that's what, I don't know about my colleagues. But I get a lot of questions about projects that people assume are Martin County. And I'm not saying they're criticizing the projects, but they're asking questions that I don't have the answers to because they're not in my purview. And people look at me like, well, why don't you know? I said, because it's not our project. Well, aren't they all your projects? It's in Martin County. I'm like, not exactly.
Commissioner Jenkins, you were next.
My comments are, the DRA, I was there when they approved that in 20 minutes without very much conversation. They do business a little differently than we do out there. I thought the first phase did get approved of 220 some houses, so that is approved. It was kind of hard to follow because literally they do things a lot different than we do.
The information that we put on this map we used from the last joint meeting, because they do not have, they don't have a static map. So we'll get with them tomorrow and find out a way how we can more regularly update.
Because that one's
the
in like 3 or
information
4 or
that
5
we're-
phases, yeah.
Commissioner Heatherington?
I was just going to ask if there was any particular size limit. There's a particular
I know where you're going.
project that I've been hearing from some neighbors, and it's, it's only 10 units, but is that,
I have asked the city to put that on the map because it's not on their map yet. And I've been back and forth with their GIS technician just to find a time to talk about what I was
so
asking for.
is there criteria that, that they provide to you that
What we were.
would or would not, put that project?
We've discussed if it needs a final site plan approval, then it would be on the project, or would be on the list. But if it's a tenant improvement like the mall this morning, probably wouldn't put that on the map if that's,
Right, right.
it's not building anything new.
Right.
So if it was
And then-
administratively approved by the city, even though it didn't go to the commission, and it was a small number of units, it would still be on the map?
I think that's what we're proposing, but if you,
I'm only saying because I think the residents, particularly in the unincorporated area that are seeing the sign or construction, if they were to use this, which hopefully they do, and they weren't to see that that project, regardless of the size, on there, then they might be a little concerned.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner, that's something we've struggled with as far as balancing that with respect to thresholds. What we have here today and in the future is going to be things that rise to a level of a formal application. And there will be some discrepancy or some decision-making with respect to what gets on this map, because it could at some point become pretty crowded. And I use that word very generally. I mean, there's a lot of area here. But I don't think the user is going to be interested in, for example, a 300 or 400 square feet of addition to a commercial building. That's not something, even if it does trip the threshold of an administrative amendment.
Well, that's why I'm saying, what criteria are we using to say it does or it does not make it on this map?
Right now, we're using final master plans, development orders, final site plans with development orders.
But is there a particular number of units or
It could be,
space?
if it's more than a building permit,
Yes.
it would come to the map automatically, and then if you wanted us to do some clearinghouse work, like if it requires a final site plan, because it's very minor in nature, and even though it's administrative, I think that's what the kind of the direction we're looking for, if you have something in mind. Mayor Matheson yesterday after the MPO asked me about something on,
Vice Mayor.
oh, I thought he was, okay, their website has both. Vice Mayor Matheson asked me about a project that was on Palm City Road, and it was 11 units, and I told him if it was in for an application, we would put it on the map. Sometimes we have like replats that are only 3 or 4 lots that might be reconfigured. If they're reconfigured lots, that's probably something we wouldn't want to put on the map.
Right.
But, so I think it's,
if there's exceptions to the land development regulations, for example, reconfiguring lots that are running north-south to east-west, and you happen to be able to pull permits for 10 homes on those platted lots of record, that wouldn't be on here. There's no, it's not a formal application. That's a private matter, and then by way of building permits for approvals. So, development order, we can start with the development orders, and then in the future, if we have some things that maybe we need to take off, we can do that. We can start with too much maybe and then pull back,
if it becomes too cumbersome, too small.
because this is going to have to be maintained as well, so.
Can you scroll down just a little bit to Indian Street again? The red that was, yeah, that one. What's that?
That's called Springthorn. It is, Silverthorn, sorry. And the city doesn't have a project description on its website yet, and that's what we're pulling from. So again, tomorrow we'll work with the city to see those descriptions. It is,
I believe it was proposed to be
it's multifamily. I just don't-
multifamily townhomes, under 100 units, and from what I gather, it's been to their local planning agency and received a recommendation of denial.
Interesting. And Lisa, I'm still somewhat sure that that intersection, nothing has yet been proposed for improvements, or have there been?
No, what I asked is that they remove the northbound left turn lane here and to build a raised median and reconfigure this to eliminate the left turns from Commerce onto Indian Street, and then construct a left turn lane here at Fisher so that people could come out to Fisher and use the traffic signal here and avoid that intersection altogether.
So will that intersection get cut down on the west side, turning left as well? Or westbound on Indian, making a left to go south?
No,
So you'll be able to go,
you'd be able to come through here and make the left in, but just not the left out.
wow, okay.
How else would you get home?
So you're encouraged to go.
So at some point, can we chat about that at some point? I mean, it's unfortunate that they didn't choose to require improvements to be made.
They, the city agreed to, and Silverthorne, if they were still a project, was agreeing to make those improvements.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure that that would have been the improvement I would make. I mean, my interpretation was that we wouldn't limit access, but we would improve access. But, Commissioner Hurd?
So whose decision is removing the northbound, westbound lane? Is that the counties or the cities?
This,
Yeah.
that was something that I requested because of the congestions that's at this intersection.
Oh, it's insane. It's absolutely crazy. I use that intersection all the time. So we have to ask that that lane be removed?
If we want them to implement it, we could do
So
it
that's-
ourselves, but I was trying to get the city development to bear the responsibility for it, was my intention.
But if the Silverthorne project doesn't happen, then there's no one to bear the responsibility.
Those are both county roads.
No, I understand, but your suggestion, which I agree with, was to have the Silverthorne development bear the financial responsibility of that correction if the LPA at the City of Stewart made a recommendation for denial that carries through to the City Commission, and that project is denied. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be interested in paying for some generous, so that would come out, and then we'd have to figure out who else will pay for it.
Can we, I'm sorry, can we bring this back as an item someday, just to talk about, because,
This intersection in particular?
yeah,
Yes.
because I don't know if I'm a fan of cutting off that northbound access. And, you know, I think originally, isn't there a smaller version of that road that used to go straight through versus the hook in the road?
The road used
Used to go through there?
And it was abandoned. and
Right.
relocated.
And so I wonder, from your perspective, and this is why I'd have an agenda item to talk about it versus doing this, but we're here, is there a distance between lights that you would be able to have a light there versus?
There is distances that the
I'm
city
sure.
has established. My concern with putting a light there has more to do with the railroad track and the proximity of the railroad.
Meaning it's
Not so
already?
much the traffic signal here, and we have a traffic signal at Fisher, so
Yeah, I'm just,
having people get trapped at this signal while the railroad is coming through,
yeah.
that was the initial concern. But we can certainly bring an item back.
This reminds me, like when we dealt with, on the other side of Indian and US 1, with the Walmart Mall and the Home Depot Mall and that intersection where we didn't let them go across. Right there? Yeah, right there.
And that's a pain in my neck.
And it's a pain in the neck. So anyway, I think
we had better opportunities here to get to the other traffic signal at Fisher, so that was, and because this is the only development here, and they're both in the City of Stewart residential, they would come south to get to US 1.
Seems like a real hassle.
If you follow the rules and you're at the park in the shopping center that Commissioner Smith just mentioned, where the former Walmart used to be, where the Walmart formerly used to be, you cannot make a left there and go back towards Palm City. So you make the right, and then you get to the intersection. You cannot make a U-turn there. So now you're making a left, and now I'm well out of my way. I'm traveling north on US 1. You can't make U-turns in front of the bank or the Home Depot entrance. So now I'm at the intersection north of, like by the Volkswagen place, and then I have to make a U-turn there. So I've gone that far out of my way when I'm leaving that parking lot where the Publix is and the Harbor Freight. So what I'm fearful will happen is people get to US 1 and Indian Street, and they're like, I'm making the U-turn anyway. Because the other option is you're in Jensen Beach before you can get back to Palm City.
The left turn was supposed to be here, and the shopping owner, or the shopping center owner blocked this off, so
By a lot.
so you can't get
Right.
this intersection to make the left anymore.
And at one point, there was a roundabout that we talked about doing it there to avoid that. And we had the same thing up at Target and Total Wine up in Jensen. I mean, there's a handful of these, like, 1,000-foot or 800-foot separations from US 1 to the next commercial interchange. Yeah, how far is that? How far off was I? I was pretty close.
So
800 feet.
the separation's supposed to be a quarter mile, 1,300 feet.
Anyway, we could consume, I could consume this for another hour. I'd like to have, if you're all in agreement, if you want to talk about this later. But
When's our next meeting with the city?
March 1st.
Let's talk about it then, at the very least.
Well, at least what would be helpful, I think, if you agree, I mean, to at least have some ideas to be able to bring to that meeting, like, this is what we think we could do, or should do, or somebody should do. Sorry.
So you want something brought prior to the March 1st meeting?
I think it would be helpful versus debating it in that meeting.
I agree with Commissioner Smith. We should be uniformed in our opinion of what should happen there, so that when we go to meet with them, it's not 5 of us and 5 of them.
Also, is the project that's at the, that it's at Canner and Indian, is that problematic?
Canner and Indian. Oh, with the bridge?
Yeah,
This
that
project,
one.
I think so.
Let's talk about that, too, at that next meeting.
Because to come out of that development now, to go back to the city of Stewart, you got to cross 2 lanes or 3 lanes and make a U-turn at Indian and Canner, right?
yes.
There's no other crossing. They won't have a crossing crossed Canner.
To go here?
Yeah.
No.
And
Well,
we,
that's the same as if you were on US 1 north of Indian Street and you came out of the Goodyear or the Home Depot or the Panera Bread or the Taco Bell. You have to go across all the lanes, go right, then make a U-turn at Fisher.
This is residential.
Right, but, out of all of those businesses, day in and day out, I think fewer people will come out of Bridgeview than will come out of all of those
And we,
establishments on US 1. There's a couple of spots where you got to be a good driver to get across 4 or 5 lanes of US 1 to get into the left turning lane to U-turn to come back.
and I think the argument or the discussion at one of our joint meetings was the intention of all of this residential the city is doing is to provide workforce housing or some form of housing for employees or residents in the city to work in the city. Well, if that's true, they got to pull a U-turn to go back and work in the city. I don't know. Anyway, so
To Marty.
I guess we'll be talking about this hopefully around the first of the year or after the first of the year.
And is that specific to the intersection of Commerce and Indian, or do you want it to be broader?
Maybe
So just so I
have her identify what she
know
thinks.
what
is
to
the
bring
problems.
back. I had
Harold just had a Haroldism.
Profound.
Profound. And of course, this, we'll blame you if it doesn't work, but it was Harold's idea.
I won't.
Why don't you, with the commentary or the discussion we've had, why don't you all bring back what you think are problem areas for us to look at?
Maybe make an interactive map.
so we can
It'll be colorful. Okay, any other discussion on this item, Commissioner Heatherington?
Oh, not so much for transportation, but this might be for Jim Gordon. Speaking of problem areas, if you look at something like a spring tree, maybe you could describe, because it's always baffling to me how the city of Stewart approves their stormwater plan versus how the county does it. And this came up, with my unincorporated residents surrounding Spring Tree and a couple other areas where they were very concerned about drainage and where the water was going to go under construction. So could you describe just the process and how they differ a little bit?
The process for the stormwater?
Yes.
So Martin County requires, during the review process, making sure that there is a legal positive outfall, and this is for construction as well as for master plan, final site plan or master plan, and legal positive outfall so that the water has somewhere to get to, and ultimately in Martin County it will get to the river somewhere. So in the city, and we also, when they are under construction, we require that stormwater management system be functional prior to the first building permit. We were just talking earlier this afternoon where we had one project that many years ago that got built and it didn't have a working control structure, and it flooded everything on that site and everything around it, and it was landscape agricultural land, so it killed all of the vegetation, and so we then now require that they have that working outfall. The city of Stewart does require that they identify the legal positive outfall during the review process, and in this particular case that would be the ditch that is a legal positive outfall. There's a ditch back here that we maintain. We did look at it. They need to get a permit from us in order to discharge into it at a rate that is less than what the rate is that discharges into it today. But what the difference between what we do and the city does is the city requires that stormwater system be constructed before the last CO. Not the first building permit, the last CO, which we have asked and recommended to them on multiple occasions that they reconsider. But we don't have that jurisdiction, so.
So the last unit built in there is when they technically have to have their stormwater constructed.
I believe that's what we've read.
Yeah,
in
that's
their-
that's our, Jim Gordon, Public Works Director, for the record. That is our understanding, is that that's the current status for them, the language for them. Now, much of that infrastructure will be constructed before they start going vertical, but it doesn't have to function. So it could be baffled, it could be blocked, there could be a plug in it. But that is the status of where they currently, so I think that would be a good thing to bring up in the future.
Typically, I do see applications for developments within the city of Stewart, either through the city staff is pretty good about sending them to me and asking for comments. The DOT sends them to me and asks for comments, and so the South Florida Water Management District doesn't ask me for comments, but they do send permit applications when they're permitted. So we do have we do know what's going on, and when the city asks for our comments, we consistently ask them to reconsider the language that they have that says that they don't have to have that working until the end, to ask them to require it prior to the first building permit.
I think this would definitely be worthy of the conversation at our joint meeting.
Yeah, and to that point, I asked everybody involved on the corner of Green River Parkway and Gents Beach Boulevard. We spent millions of dollars and Green River Parkway trying to fix decades worth of bad flooding specific to this sort of jurisdiction, and just to make sure that that everything that can be done is done right, because all of Pinecrest is way below grade of where it should have been when it was originally built. The streets were woefully under elevation, and we fixed a lot of it, and we haven't had really any significant flooding. There was a storm last winter that we had a little bit of water on Acacia and on Cypress, but generally speaking, that wasn't a problem. The problem we still had was the backup of water coming off Warner Creek at the other end, coming back through the east side of Pinecrest. But, again, everything is so closely balanced up there that I hope they've got it all figured out, because it really As it is right now, the water's supposed to flow north, right? It goes up under US 1, or up under Jensen Beach Boulevard and back towards West Jensen,
It flows east. It flows south and then east.
out of Osprey Preserve.
And then south through the Haney Creek also.
Mhm.
We constructed this relief.
Okay. And what, can you click on the orange?
Not while I'm in measurement.
Oh.
Well, yeah, there you go.
So it is 86 attached units, one single family residence. So they're duplexes, they're condos?
Presumably.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on this, other than what we chatted about? No? You all good? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's great that you're moving in the interactive piece of it. So that'll be on our website eventually, that people can click on this map. They'll be able to go to one of the colored areas, click on it, and they'll be able to see who's doing it and where it is and how many units and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's great.
One final question. When projects stall or run out of steam, will you be removing them?
We have done so in the past. I would envision if there's something that the timetable has expired, then yes, we would remove it. There's no need to have it out there.
I think that,
Timetables don't expire anymore.
I'm not sure about the city.
Don't know.
Well, I mean, with the state legislative extensions, correct, there are literally many months of extensions available. But
I think the other thing that maybe we could have brought up was in the case of the residential development, we consider the project done when the infrastructure is complete. Sometimes it takes a very long time for all of the single-family units within that development to be constructed. So we were thinking we would take it off when the infrastructure was complete and accepted by the county engineering and the utility department, and if they're like landscaping and environmental and preserve area, but not through the point where we hold security for several years. In some cases, for the landscaping's held for 3 years. We wouldn't leave it on the map even if all the units weren't constructed. If that seems to make sense, we just kind of wanted to get confirmation on that.
I think that's logical. If projects can easily and quickly get onto the map so people can see what's pending, I think that when you feel it's appropriate at that point to take them off, because this is a map about development and projects, not about what's done. What's done is done. So I think that makes sense, that if you've reached a certain threshold of the project, it's no longer application, pending, construction. It's done. It's just part of what is.
Okay. You all set?
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
all this.
Thank
Great
you.
stuff so far.
Great work.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Lisa.
it. That brings us to the end of the agenda, I think.
Last
Um,
agenda item of the year for these two. Closed out the year. Fabulous.
So this brings us to our 5:05, which is really at 2:20. Mr. McChrystal, you apparently are the last public speaker for 2021. Make it a good one.
I wish I was more prepared.
Oh, no, I'm sure.
You got my attention tweaked with your discussion about water and sprinkling this morning. I think a history of Floratam is what everyone has to understand. Floratam was designed, is genetically engineered to grow in a swamp for the builders down in Dade and Broward when they were trying to develop all the way to the Everglades. So actually, Floratam for sure should be outlawed anywhere east of US 1 where there's nothing but sugar sand, because you're literally spitting into the wind trying to keep Floratam alive on sugar sand. And it requires so much water that even in the great swamp of Palm City during the dry season, they have to water. It's just geologically factual. So there you go. And I know they're trying to engineer some more grasses that are more drought tolerant. However, until you get serious about getting rid of those grasses that require that much water, and having lawns being as special as they are, you're really just putting Band-Aids on something. Jupiter Island will not comply again. I remember the last time everyone lost their lawns, and I drove through Jupiter Island, and it was green as could be. Okay. And if you're looking for high-tech sprinkler systems to solve the problem, think about it. We're asking for high-tech machinery outside in the heat and in the moisture 100% of the time. That's another dead end. Unfortunately, high-maintenance lawns are huge business, okay, and that's an issue, okay? And so the people that have that huge high lawn maintenance business is a force, and apparently they're trying to figure out how to get rid of the Floratam also. It's kind of a silver, every cloud has a silver lining. If you do this, and again, how are you going to enforce it? But a lot of people will lose their Floratam lawns, and maybe this time they'll figure out, well, maybe I'm not going to plant those grasses anymore. So that would be a benefit of this. But again, enforcing it, I don't see it happening. So anyways, on the subject of green things, these people that have these high lawn maintenance businesses is big business. In the wintertime, when they have to keep their guys busy, all right, because the grass isn't growing, what irritates me the most is then they send their guys out to butcher all the sables when they know that butchering the sables is not healthy for the sables, but they got to keep their guys busy. So, Merry Christmas to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thanks to you who stood up for a little guy this morning on this topic.
Thank you, sir.
With that, Commissioners, we'll go down the row. Commissioner Jenkins,
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's to everybody.
Commissioner Heatherington,
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. See everyone in 2022.
Commissioner Campy.
Thank you. I'd like to wish my father a happy 85th birthday this week.
Oh, that's
Wow.
nice.
That is nice.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Ditto.
Christmas, Happy New Year and all that.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
And our next meeting will be January 11th, it says, and 25th in 2022. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right, well, everybody have a very safe holiday, and we'll see you back in January.
Be nice
We
to
are
each
adjourned.
other.